What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 35 of the Back Pick Podcast, presented by All Star Sporting Goods. I'm your host, Brett Thomas. Today's guest is Stan Jurga. Stan is the owner and director of product development for All Star Sporting Goods, and he breaks down the brand new state-of-the-art MVP Pro gear that just came out this year. Let me tell you, there's a lot of time and attention that went into this, and Stan breaks down every little nook and cranny of this gear and how it can help you become a better catcher. Hope you enjoy it. The Back Pick Podcast and the Catching Academy are happy to be partnered with All Star Sports, who we think does the best job of taking care of catchers. You can go to their website and use our code CatchingAcademy10 and get 10% off anything site-wide. We are huge fans of ours. Obviously they cater to catchers, and what they do for our catchers, we think is phenomenal. And just thought it'd be cool to kind of deep dive. One thing I love about All Star, big company, and we see it all over baseball and softball, but it is a little small at heart, a family business. Tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely not large. We're probably maybe about 30 employees. Here in the building in Massachusetts, and we have a bit of a unique story in terms of how we got into sporting goods. The original company goes back to 1860, and it was a belt and suspender company. So, in fact, we just moved out of our location, and that building was basically the original mill building that made things like this, which are basically a bunch of suspenders. You can see it says, the President's suspenders. That was actually the brand name because apparently several presidents in a row wore suspenders, made by that company, which at the time was the C.A. Edgerton Company. Then it became Boston Belts, and then the George Frost Company. And apparently the story goes like, the mill building is humming along, making leather belts, suspenders, crazy things like women's corsets and men's garters to keep up socks, of all things. Things that we don't use any longer, obviously. And back in 1960, our sales rep, who was in Chicago, was calling on Sears Roebuck. And I'm not sure how many listeners really remember Sears, but it was like the Target, the Walmart of the day.
Oh, yeah.
They had a thick, Sears catalog that would, the mail order. And Sears is buying tons of belts, tons of suspenders. And our sales rep was asked if the George Frost Company, which was the parent company at the time, could the George Frost Company make a jock strap? And so my grandfather said, why not? I mean, it's basically belts and suspender, And so we started making jock straps for Sears, and that was the start of the All-Star division. And so as the All-Star division grew into other sporting goods, they had to build a second building next door. And largely at first it was things like football pads, like hip, thigh, tail pads, volleyball, elbow pads and knee pads. And then it's really in the 70s that they started getting to baseball protective. And that's kind of where we found our home and our niche. And I guess you could say the rest is history. We just kind of keep focusing on the product and just trying to make the best protective, best fitting gear that a catcher can use.
I love that. It really hits home, to just have that kind of small family-owned business. And I just don't hear that, enough about you guys and what you've come from. So you are an owner of the company, but you label yourself as director of development. So you're a bit of a geek when it comes to this stuff.
Not gonna lie, I'm a nerd. Yeah, totally. We really geek out over product, and I think that's one thing that makes us really special and unique too. I mean, we are small, we are focused, so and this really hasn't wavered since we started focusing on baseball protective. So our dad started going to spring training, started talking to catchers, and initially, this is like 40 years ago at this point, even longer. Gosh. And the catchers were confused because who's this guy asking me about the gear I wear? Because I just get the gear from the team. Like they just hand me this soft, piece of fabric I put on my chest and some spray painted leg guards that kind of match the team colors. The paint's flaking off, but it's the tools of ignorance, right? Like you just kind of get what the team gives you. But our dad just started asking questions like, well, if you could have a better chest protector, if you could have better leg guards, how would it how would it feel? Like what would you want? And so again, like the catchers are really confused because no one ever asked them those questions. The people coming into the locker room typically talking to the stud pitchers or the great batters. And so our dad just started listening, and he would come back with some ideas, make some prototypes, and then basically go back to the catchers and say, hey, this is what we talked about. What do you think of this new leg guard design? And so from there, just kept iterating, kept making things a little bit better bit by bit. And we're doing the same thing. So the way I describe like my role is I've got 1 foot on field with the pro players who use our product, and I've got 1 foot in the test lab, which maybe we'll have time to go take a look at that, down the hall. And that way, we're just really connected. There's no game of telephone between the sports marketing guy and the product team. I'm going to go see guys, at Fenway or down the road at the Worcester Red Sox, see players, bring that back, to the team here, or bring Mike or Keenan, other teammates on the design team to go see the players directly. We get down on our hands and knees, we get dirty, we look at stuff. We're always asking, what do you like? But more importantly, what don't you like? Because when you don't like something, chances are other people don't like it either, or there's room for improvement. So it's real simple. Again, nothing different than what our dad started doing decades ago, is just listening, and then just really trying to get it right. And we obsess. One thing you'll probably get today is like we obsess over details. We make a great product, but the problem is we stop talking about it because we start working on the next product. And so we're trying to get better at that, and sort of the marketing side. So thanks very much for having me today, so I can maybe do a little bit of that and try to kind of tell the story behind how this gear came to be.
For sure. And I think this. So now the MVP Pro gear, which is what just came out here this year, has catered to the change of the position, which I think is really cool. And again, leads to the feedback that you're getting from your catchers. So talk to us a little bit about this. We know that now the one knee stance is obviously heavily prevalent in the game. And you guys have taken a lot of feedback with that into the design of the MVP Pro. So break that down a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. So, first and foremost, protection is paramount. Like, our product has to be protective, whether it's something that goes on your head, your chest, or your legs. So that kind of goes without saying, but that's really kind of where we start. And then we start thinking, what are the functional requirements? What are the needs of the player? And if you go back a couple of years ago to when we started thinking about the MVP Pro series, it was, yes, definitely one knee down. And at the time, we weren't sure if it was going to stick, because you start hearing things about automated strike zone coming, and is that going to make one knee down go away? Like, there's a lot of uncertainty. 2-3 years ago, we started having ideas about what this is going to look like. And so, but with that, there are a couple of things that came out of it. First, like on the chest protector, we're thinking, okay, well, if automated strike zone is coming, that could get rid of the art of receiving. And we're not fans of that. Like we love, stealing, converting balls into strikes. We love the art of manipulating the ball. But if automated strike zone happens, what's left? Basically throwing, and we can't help guys throw any better, and blocking. So we're thinking, well, maybe we can help guys block. So like we had that on the whiteboard. And then certainly with leg guards, we wanted to cater to the one knee down stance, because our original hinged leg guard, the first leg guard on the market with a hinge, the S7 Axis series or the LG40W Pro model, it was designed before one knee down. And so the knee just didn't articulate enough. So those are kind of like the two big things that we're going after for the chest and then for the leg guards. But overall, second to protection is just, we want a seamless fit. We want people to put on leg guards and not have to touch them and keep tugging them up. And that goes way back. Like, I'm coming up on my 20th anniversary here. And of course, family business, I grew up with it my whole life. But when I first started working here as an engineer, one of the first things our dad said is, hey, you got to fix the leg guards, because every time a player stands up, they're tugging at the knee because it all sags and whatnot. So those are kind of things we started thinking about. So in terms of the product, here's the MVP Pro chest protector. And the first thing that probably sticks out to people is, what are these like weird protrusions on the sides here? And we call these our 3D U's, or our 3D U bars. And if you go back in time, if you look at pictures of Jason Varitek, our dad basically started building chest protectors with kind of these horizontal U shapes on the side of the abdomen. And the whole idea with design was that it made the abdomen very flat. So when a catcher was dropping to block a ball, in the past, the chest protector is kind of wrapped around the chest. And if you didn't square it up very well, the ball could be going left or right. So by putting those original U bars on the side, it really helped flatten the abs. We then later started doing like wedged, 6-packs to help drive the ball down. But the whole idea is like, how do we make a very, very flat profile to help control the direction of the ball? So again, thinking about automated strike zone, maybe blocking can become more of an asset for a catcher. We're trying to think, how do we help catchers block balls? So when the chest protector is flat, these things stick up in the air a bit. But when it starts to wrap around your body, what happens is you get basically a much broader wall or much broader surface. It's hard, the camera kind of distorts things a bit, but if you take a measurement from here to here and then compare it to the full width of these three-dimensional U-bars, you get almost a 50% increase in the surface area, which is huge, that you're presenting that much more of a flat surface, to the ball. So just like helmets and face masks, we do a lot of testing. It's a great idea, but we didn't know if it would work. So we had a summer intern a couple of summers ago basically build what we call the WHIPS system, the wild pitch simulator. And so what it is, and it's still under wraps because of the move, we're still unpacking. We have a mannequin that's basically hunched over in a blocking position. And that allowed us to basically put different chest protectors, different materials, different 3D printed geometries, and basically rifle off, a pitching machine ball had with some topspin to see what would happen. And more traditional chest protectors, you get a bit of a fan angle where the balls come off the mannequin and bounce to the right or to the left. We can measure the distance out as well. And what we saw as we started honing in on the geometry and the specific stiffness and softness of these 3D U-bars, you started to see that fan angle of the ball started going from being wide and being more down in front for the catchers. So that was really validating to see that, hey, in the lab, certainly a controlled scenario, you can see the performance benefit. Through this past year, we've heard from players who are wearing it and saying, hey, I'm blocking balls better. One of them was Jose Herrera from the Diamondbacks. And he called me up in July. And, in this day and age, like you get a lot of text messages. You don't always get phone calls. So like when Jose called me, I was like, this is important. And he started saying, Stan, like this chest protector is saving my life. And I'm thinking like, is it a commotio cordis thing? Like, like a heart, like, does he have a heart condition? Like, how are we saving your life? And so after a couple of questions, it became clear that it was all about blocking, is that, he had just received a set of away gear in the new MVP Pro gear, and he can't go back to the old chest protector because he's noticed such a performance boost in terms of blocking balls. So that was immense. In the wild, if you will, we've seen some players in like bullpen sessions or blocking sessions before games. We've seen them catch balls, basically kind of like right up in the corner. And I wish I had some video here to play, where I really wish I had the wild pitch simulator up and running to show you. But what happens is, if you catch a ball anywhere in here, it's just like a regular chest protector. It still deflects downward. But when you start catching balls just a little bit to the side, the ball really kind of gets harnessed in here and just drops just straight down. Some people ask, well, like what happens if it hits on the ridge here? Well, if it hits out there, if there was no 3D U-bar, it'd be hitting you more on the side anyway and bouncing, or maybe catching you in the bicep, which it's still going to happen. So if anything, we're just broadening that wall, increasing the probability that you're going to block the ball in front versus to the side. So that's been huge. And then there's some other details too that are a bit subtle. Thinking about one knee down is when we started observing, catchers in a one knee down stance, we're seeing that the chest protector was getting pushed up a little bit into their throat. And that's partly because, their hip area, as their knee was going up, was basically driving the bottom edge of the chest protector and pushing it up. So if you notice, it's real subtle that we've just cut a little bit of the material out from here because our old chest protectors kind of came out maybe only about like an inch or so. So it's really subtle, but guys have noticed. In fact, when we had prototypes last summer, or actually really 2 summers ago, and we're going over to the Worcester Red Sox to have them, do some wear testing. It's one of these things where you bring a prototype, have them put it on, you'd have them get down on one knee, and you'd see like it's not pushing up, into their throat or collarbone area. they go put their S7X chest protector on, and now you start seeing it move up every time they get into that one knee down stance, and just like, oh gosh, like we got to fix that. So it's a very, very small detail, but we think it's really important for comfort and just fit, because if the gear doesn't fit right, you're not protected very well. And to that point too, like we take a lot of pride in having this contoured throat that sticks outward here, so that it really comes up and protects your Adam's apple. Another thing that we don't do a very good job of talking about is the plastic plates in the collarbone section. This is something our dad added decades ago to really protect that vulnerable bone right here. And not only is it protection, but if you start to bend the shoulder like this, it'll start to take on some memory and stay curved like that. And what's great about it is it really helps the chest bar just kind of hug your shoulders, and it kind of just sits up here versus relying solely on the harness to keep things in place. And it's a really subtle detail, which you can't see on the camera. But one thing we did to improve this is that, one thing that happens is when you have a plastic plate and a piece of foam laminated to it, you bend it, but over time it wants to keep stretching and go back to its original flat shape. So Mike, our head designer, he had this idea of, hey, what if when we're die cutting this block of foam, what if we put some slits into it horizontally? We don't want to cut all the way through, because if we have gaps, that allows a ball to basically kind of penetrate and make more contact with the bone. But if we just slice maybe halfway down through the foam, that'll allow the foam to sort of expand and flare out. And so that way it's going to maintain that nice curved shape for longer. And it's really works. That's a technology we call conform. Another aspect of the chest protector is we're just trying to clean things up. So for decades, there's always been like a metal hook here. You bring your clip over, and you usually have to use two hands. Like you have to have one hand kind of hold the D-ring, and you clip this through. We're trying to figure out like, how can we make it just like kind of one-handed? And so with this molded hook here, if you can see in the camera, it just allows you to simply come through and just clip in very easily. So there's a lot of guys who can just reach down and just do it one-handed. Some guys fish up, some guys fish down. It's kind of funny when you watch Human Factors. You think you know how people put chest protectors on, and then you start watching. Oh, people do it differently. Again, I guess I'm showing my true nerdiness where I'm like watching how guys like hook things, but it's really really important to figure out how guys interact with this so that we can make it as seamless and quick and easy as quick and easy to put on as possible. Any questions at all?
No, and honestly, like I'll give you some feedback on our end as we've started implementing it.
Yeah.
The U bars are, I mean, pretty impressive. Like it's pretty cool. It's like you look at it and you're kind of like, hey, oh, this is supposed to help, and then you actually start doing it, and you're like, holy crap! Kids are like, they're getting a ball like right here, and it's coming. They're like, whoa, like it's crazy. I mean, it legitimately funnels balls back to the middle.
It really does. Yeah. I mean, it's really funny to think back, like again, over the last couple of years as we're working on this, because again, with our close proximity to Polar Park, I mean, we're like 25 minutes, from the AAA affiliate for the Red Sox. We're over there often, seeing the home team. We got the benefit of having basically this past year 4 catchers over there in our gear. But every other week, we have or almost every week we have a visiting team coming through too. So we see a lot of guys. So it's just a great opportunity to interact and kind of see what they think. So we first went over, Mike and I, with a cobbled together chest protector. We had like our old CP40 Pro chest protector. We cut the 3D U bars off. Mike had 3D printed different shapes. And initially the guys were feeling it, like, oh, that's too hard. Like they were kind of transfixed on just the firmness. We're like, well, don't think about that yet. Just think about the geometry. And we thought guys would be really skeptical at first, but they're pretty open to it, which typically what you find like in the minors, guys are a little more open to trying new things. Once the guys in the big leagues, like kind of forget it, like they're kind of dialed in, like they're going to the job every single day. They got to do things the same way over and over again. As soon as spring training breaks, you really don't have much opportunity to really change how they're going to approach the game. But again, in the minors, there's just a little bit more free time, less. I think they feel like they're probably less under the microscope, so they can experiment a little bit. So they just tend to be more open-minded to things. So through a series of iterations, like again, just 3D printing things, starting to cut pieces of foam by hand, just getting that feedback was interesting. But again, a lot of the skepticism was really about this ridge. What's going to happen if it hits here? Is it going to go way to the side? And then once we start having video of the wild pitch simulator, seeing the balls bounce, uh, off the mannequin, it really started to persuade guys like, oh, that's really going to help. And again, if it's way to the side, like, well, it's going to hit my arm anyway, and I'll trap it that
Hmm.
way. So, but it's great. It's wonderful hearing that guys can really feel and see a difference with the blocking, because it's such a dynamic thing too. Like, I mean, you want to think that you know where it hits, but let's be honest, sometimes it's really hard to tell,
For
where it is.
sure.
But it's great. I mean, we also brought like a high speed camera out, and we're able to get some like high speed, slow motion video of it hitting real guys too. And again, you got to be patient because it's not like every time it's going to hit right there. It's kind of on the fringe moments. So, but yeah, but we're super pumped. Want to talk about the leg guard?
Let's do it.
All right. So this is where there's almost too much to talk about in the leg guard. And we had to
These are
even,
so awesome.
well, thank you. And it's important to talk about fit as well, because as I mentioned earlier, like if the gear doesn't fit properly, it's not going to protect the way we designed it to protect you, but also it's going to be uncomfortable. And for years, I've told players like, tell me what you like, but tell me what you don't like. And I've used the example of like leg guard straps. Like you might think straps are straps, you know, they're a necessary thing, and you just live with them. Like they might be uncomfortable, they might be tight. After a doubleheader, they might be kind of burning into your legs a little bit, but they're just straps. Like we just have to learn to live with it. But I want to hear about that. Like, what are you doing to modify your straps? Like, are they uncomfortable? Because again, these are the opportunities that we have to make the product better for you and for everyone else who uses our product. So with these leg guards, we've just got so much going on. So the first thing is really this knee. And when we first invented the hinge knee on our S7 Axis leg guards, the LG40W model, guys were not dropping a knee. Jose Molina was doing it a little bit on the Tampa Bay Rays, but really no one else was. Our old knee just didn't bend enough. You got to about 90, maybe a little less than 90, and then you start getting some resistance. So with this MVP Pro gear, there's no resistance whatsoever. It's extremely mobile, and you just completely move it any way you like. And we did a lot of things with this too. It's like we really cleaned up the leg guard because, we are the first company. At All Star, we have a lot of firsts. We're the first to do a removable shoulder cap. We're the first on a leg guard to do what we call the triple knee, which you had the thigh, the knee, you had this floating piece. And now, like that just looks so bulbous. Like it's so kludgy up here, because with the MVP Pro, it's just two pieces, really, really clean and low profile, because we don't want anything getting in the way, especially if, with your receiving hand, if you're, doing, right knee down and you're going over your left knee, we don't want to have anything getting in the way of your arm. We want total clearance. So a lot went into making this knee. And before I kind of demonstrate how it works, I was going to point out something else too, is like in terms of protection and safety, as guys are starting to bend leg guards of all brands more and more, that triple knee was really starting to separate a little bit. And, if you don't have as much overlap on the plates, as they start to separate, they can start to pivot inward when they take a direct, shot from a foul tip. So we're hearing from guys, again, not just from All Star, but from other brands, that they're starting to feel more shots on the top of their knee. So if you took a cross section of the knee and the thigh, what you'd see is basically that they have these ridges, so they can't separate. They kind of lock, and it's impossible to go any further than this. But in that geometry of that ridge that bends down on both pieces, the geometry makes it a lot stiffer. So we've really improved the stiffness of this knee. And you kind of cringe, at least I do, like when you give out new product to guys. Like we've done tons of testing in the lab, we've done lots of field testing, lots of wear testing with local players. But until guys really go through spring training and really put the gear through its paces, you're kind of sitting on pins and needles. Just what are they going to feel? And the good news is that the feedback was they feel less. Like they weren't really feeling those foul tips anymore, which is a huge safety thing. So a big part of this leg guard is the fit, and it has a lot to do with the hinge. I'm going to move the camera down here so that you can kind of see it in action a bit more for those who haven't had a chance to try these on. So you'll see that the straps.
I love the at the top. We used to see all the time, Stan, where that like it would kind of like separate a little bit, when you're in the one knee
Oh,
from
100%.
the leg, and like even would see like balls sometimes like go in there.
Yeah,
And that
totally.
was like one of the first things I noticed here. I was, just like bending my knee like this, and I was like, man, this thing is glued to my thigh.
And that's the whole idea, is like we want guys to put leg guards on and never touch them again. There's some great footage of Logan Hoppy on the Angels doing his pregame routine, and you'll see that he's like doing all these amazing high mobility, like I don't even know how to describe it. Like he's like walking on his knees, his hips are going all different ways, and even though his leg guards are sliding all over, the ground, he never once touches his leg guards because they're just locked in place. And that has a lot to do with a bunch of different things. One is we've really improved the straps. So no more elastic. It's all neoprene. So really wide to really spread that load over a bigger area. This calf strap is really important. We want to cup the back of your calf because that prevents the leg guard from sliding up and down. It really kind of locks in position. So, and even before that, one thing I should really say is you want to make sure with these leg guards, you get your kneecap centered in the knee. And, on the inside here, we've got this nice, this is something we've done for decades, and we still don't tell people about it, but it's removable and positionable up and down. But out of the box with this knee pad, you want to get your kneecap like right into this spot right here, because that just like locks in the leg guard. And you want to make sure it's the right length. So one thing that we're finding is guys who are a little tall, like let's say 6 foot or plus or minus, they need to add a lot of extra length. In fact, I'll come back to that with a story with the Worcester Red Sox and the wear testing, because that was an important innovation. But you want to make sure you have the right shin length, because otherwise it's not going to fit right. That part about like the top part lifting up, it'll still lift up, because if the hinge is too far down, it's going to do this. You really need to make sure the knee is up and over so that this part stays nice and flat. But before I put this on, an important observation about legs, or really anything that bends, is that if you make a line here and make a line here and take a measurement, then bend your knee and measure it again, that distance has gotten longer. So that was a great insight that Mike had into this, is that we built these, what we call the shift technology right here, where it slides. So if everything is dialed in, you strap the leg guard on, locking in your calf first. That's kind of the best place to start. Some guys start up top, some guys start down low. We want guys to start really kind of with this calf strap. And you'll notice that the straps are different too, because they're basically like a seatbelt. They just push it and click. We got rid of all the clunky D-rings, so it just snaps in right into the plastic. And we found through wear testing that we were just trying to clean up the leg guard, get rid of parts, do a little bit of cost engineering, simplify the design. Because when it comes to building these, we have to stock nylon webbing in like 25 different colors, have all these little metal D-rings. You have to stitch them in, rivet them in. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot to keep track of all the inventory.
They definitely wear over time, and that was
exactly
same thing with the pad, the third pad. We would see the first thing to go would kind of be those nylon straps holding them on. So I love the cleaner. Everything is just so much cleaner.
Just try to simplify things as much as possible. And so what we found is when you click right into the plastic, you get a much better fit because you're pulling right on that plastic shell. And another thing that we do a horrible job of telling people about is our plastic on our leg guards has a bit of memory. So if you start to shape it and bend it, if you've got like skinny legs or a bit wider legs, it'll start to have that memory and fit your leg a lot better. But even if you don't do that, just by buckling right into the plastic, you're getting a nice conforming fit around your leg. We've got toe strap as well down here, and then the last thing is putting on the top strap up here around your quad. And if everything is dialed in properly, when you bend your knee, this top pad just doesn't move at all. It just stays fixed to your quad. The plastic is sliding through these channels right here, the shift. And again, if you watch guys doing blocking drills, sliding, running, they just don't touch their leg guards anymore, which is perfect. Guys are telling us it almost feels like they're wearing nothing. It's kind of seamless, invisible. That's everything that we want to hear. In terms of obsessing over details, back to these clips right here is, we did a lot of 3D printing to figure out the right shape. So there's a subtle curve to this so that as you push the clip in, it kind of self-centers and again, just kind of clicks in. When we first started doing this, like we kind of got that dialed in, but we were using just the regular metal clips and they're hard to get out. We're like, well, that's not going to work with like the pitch clock and like you got to be really, really quick. So Mike did a series of 3D prints, and we basically hit on like a really long, slender shape with this kind of triangular top. And what we're trying to do is, everyone kind of just up on the quad. We still have the regular D-rings. So there was really no other way to go right into the plastic with this piece staying fixed. So we still have the kind of the old-fashioned metal ring and clip, and we've all kind of been used to just taking a clip and twisting it to pop it off. We wanted that same kind of flicking motion with the clips going into the plastic. And so again, if you kind of just twist it, it just kind of pops right out, super quick. And so it takes a little bit of getting used to, especially if no one has seen how these clip in. But once you get the hang of it, the leg guards go on super fast and come off really quickly as well. Now back to the fit story. This is really, really important. So we had a really nice 3D printed pair of leg guards that we had that was, because here we've got 2 3D printers that do fused deposition modeling, like basically squirts out molten plastic layer by layer, builds it up. It's great for fit. It's great for assessing kind of the form of something. We do it for any plastic pieces, helmet shells, anything we can. We even print rubber pieces, which is really fun. The only downside is that we can't impact test our 3D printed parts. They're just not durable enough. But we went out and we used a third-party company to use a high-tech 3D printer to print really solid plastic pieces. Once we were like 90% done with the design, we built leg guards, fully functioning leg guards with them. We brought them to the Worcester Red Sox, and we had 2 players who were the same height, Caleb Hamilton and Oscar Rangel. Caleb puts these things on, dials them in, drops into a bullpen, and it looks perfect. Every time he's getting in and out of the crouch, the sliders are sliding, like he's not touching the leg guards. They're beautiful. Like, so Mike and I like high-fiving each other, like, yes, we're done. Okay, so then Caleb finishes up. He passes the same pair of leg guards off to Oscar. And again, Oscar's the same height. Oscar puts the leg guards on. He gets into his first crouch, and his leg guard looks like this. It's just like sticking up in the air. And Mike and I are like, what's going on? Like, because it just, the sliders weren't sliding, they're jammed, and like it's sticking up here, and it's kind of, it wasn't getting in his way, but like it just wasn't flat like it was supposed to be. So they finish up, and we took out a tape measure, real simple, and we basically just measured, like the length of their shin. Even though they're the same exact height, Oscar was about 1.5 inches longer in the shin. So he had a lot more leg than Caleb. Yeah. And we've kind of known that, guys, particularly women, and really have a lot more, difference in proportions between their torso length and their leg length. But guys are pretty similar. But what was really crucial is to get the position of this hinge relative to your knee in the right spot, because if that hinge is too low, this thigh piece just can't get up and over. So what happened was the Worcester Red Sox went away for a road trip. They came back a week later, and that's when Mike and I had devised this way to adjust the ankle area. So when customers get the leg guard now, it looks a little funky because it looks like there's no toe here in the box. You take it out, and what we did is on purpose, we put this ankle flap in backwards because it comes out completely. And we want people to take the time to get the right fit. Because what Mike and I figured out is, hey, let's make the ankle slide up and down, because then you can control the length of the shin to get the hinge at the right point relative to your knee. So when Caleb and Oscar came back, we had a prototype made, and it was great because Caleb put it on, and we had it adjusted basically flush, so just kind of like the normal 16.5-inch length, and it fit him perfect, just like the first prototype. And then when Oscar came out, we moved this piece about 1.5 inches longer. So now kind of between my fingers here is a bit more of a distance. So again, it makes the shin effectively longer. And this time when Oscar got into his crouch, it just slid perfectly and it just stayed nice and low. So that was sort of like how we hit upon that. Super, like, wear testing is so important no matter what we're doing. Because on a computer screen, it might look good. On a sketch, it might look great. your 3D printed parts might look beautiful and like super awesome, but until you really see it function, you just don't know. So yeah, so that's a big part of it. So like for anyone who's listening and watching, definitely take the time to put the leg guard on correctly, because again, I was kind of demonstrate. This is it, because I've got kind of longer legs, longer shin. And so again, if it's on correctly, it should be nice and flush like this, no matter how you move your leg. But if I take it off and I shorten up the shin, and same thing, I'll still start with the calf, go down to the ankle. I'll do the quad. So now when I bend my knee, I'm sure it's showing on the camera as much, the hinge is not, or sorry, the slider is not moving in the groove all the way. It's kind of getting stuck halfway. And then you're kind of getting this kind of lobster tail kind of effect where this is flaring out and this is flaring out. Get your hand in here. And again, we don't want that, because we want guys to be able to have total range of motion with their receiving hand over their knee and whatnot. So, but again, once these are dialed in to the right fit, you kind of set it and forget it. Like, you don't have to adjust the straps anymore. You don't adjust the length anymore. You just get out there and go. So,
and does it go higher up on the thigh now, Stan?
Just a little bit. So like if you have our old S7 Axis leg guards and you stand up, they come to about this same height. These do feel, the MVP Pro leg guards do feel a little bit longer, because when you're getting down into your crouch, that piece is staying fixed on your quad. And that's definitely a benefit, because certainly on the side that you're dropping, you're getting more coverage for any kind of foul tip that can come down. And again, we've heard that from guys this past season, that, we kind of wear our bruises like a badge of honor, but it's nice when you hear from guys like, hey, I've taken a lot of shots here and I'm fine. No bruising, no anything. It's like, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So yeah, so it's interesting, because again, if you go back to when we're starting to sketch these things out and starting to do some bench level prototypes, we were not sure that one knee down was going to stick. There's still a lot of back and forth, especially with automated strike zone kind of coming into play. Like, but now, like, as you talk with catchers, like in catching coaches, it's here to stay. I mean, there's no question about it whatsoever. There's so many benefits. I think you probably feel a lot of questions about blocking. There's some people who initially like, you can't block with a one knee stance. It's like, well, actually you can. You got to work on it, but like, you're already on the ground. And I had a conversation with Tanner Swanson of the Yankees, 2 summers ago, and I just love the way he thinks about the position. Like one knee down, like, again, he's one of the biggest
pioneer.
Really, exactly.
Yeah.
Data and data driven, like just observations, measuring what you can measure. And again, I'm a geeky engineer, so like when he starts talking about bell curves and normal distributions, I'm like, oh, this is my guy, but what he was talking about is, when you're trying to block, you have to drop to the ground, and gravity is basically what's limiting you. It's 9.8 meters per second squared. You can't accelerate any faster than that. So when you're on the ground with one knee, you're already there. And he says, think about what you're trying to block. Like, probably 80% of what you're trying to block, like, I'm drawing a bell curve, like a normal distribution here. Certainly you've got some tails out here, like some, hard to the left, hard to the right. Those can be hard to get to no matter what position you're in. But 80% of what you're trying to block is kind of falling within this window. And if you work on it, you can make it happen. And you're already kind of ahead of the game because you're on the ground. You're not trying to drop and move at the same time. So I just love the way he thinks about it, just kind of breaking it down into basics and just fundamentals and kind of going from there.
I think too, with the hinge, we're seeing that, like, that third piece wasn't always in the way, but it definitely kind of created some friction. And it's like, as I'm on them, I'm like, there's just one piece on the ground. And I mean, I was blocking with the guys last week, and it's super easy to slide. It's super important that we're able to have that ability to push and slide on that knee,
Yeah.
and it's been huge.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up too, because I kind of skipped over it. If you look at the knee, it's very boring. It's very plain, like it's just very smooth. We have a couple little grooves in here for a little bit of aesthetic design, but there's no ridges, and that's by design because if you go back in time, we had an old leg guard model, the LG 21W, and some older guys like Matt Trainer, who's on the Rangers, Brian Pena as well. You know, they kind of made their pro debut wearing those leg guards, and then we came out with the LG 22Ws, and they had a bit more design in the knee and had a slight vertical ridge here and a slight vertical ridge here. And both Matt Trainer and Brian Pena mentioned to me, just out of the blue, like, hey, I can't slide as well in the new leg guards, laterally, side to side. And they said they think it's because of that geometry. And they were right. So starting in the generation after that, we basically removed that just to clean it up. And we've continued doing that with the new MVP Pro leg guard as well. And then, we spend a lot of time again on our hands and knees looking at things. So we want to, this pivot point is critical to get the thigh pad to get up over the knee and onto your quad. But we didn't want these points, this ridge right here dragging on the ground. So we spend a lot of time, kind of looking at each other, like we were trying to get our knees, really kind of wide, as wide as we think we'd be getting for blocking, just sliding on the ground different ways. Like, in any way, is this going to get dug into the clay or onto turf? And luckily, we're able to design in a way that it stayed clear of it. It can get pretty close, but it's still clear of it. We thought about, is clay going to get in here and gunk it up? And, if it does, it drops out pretty easily. So it's very, very well done. We obsess over things too. Like we've got little recesses here where the stitching is. And let me back up a moment too. Like this stitch around here is really important because the pad on the inside here, again, I'm going down a rabbit hole here. So if this gets too
Keep
detailed,
rolling. I'm loving it.
So we have this kind of sheathing of padding right here, and we don't put it right up against the plastic. We actually have a little bit of an air gap in there, and it's like a hammock. So that way, when you're on here, maybe like a trampoline, I guess you could say, when you're putting your full body weight on here, you're not right up against the plastic. So that's more comfortable. It's better for impact absorption as you drop into your knees. And then, of course, we've got this kind of nicer gel pad that's adjustable up, down, left to right to even more protection. And actually, the whole reason we did gel is I was at Fenway, gosh, I mean, it's probably close to 15 years ago. And I noticed that Jason Varitek and all the other catchers had basically white athletic tape all over their knee pads. And I'm thinking, did we do something wrong? Like, is it breaking? But it wasn't just our gear, it was some other brands too. And so I asked Jason about it. I said, hey, Tech, like, what's up with this? And he says, oh, the athletic trainer buys sheet stock of gel, and basically we just tape it in there because at that time, Gary Tuck was our catching coordinator. And Gary Tuck, whether it was spring training or the regular season, had the Red Sox catchers dropping and blocking balls more than any other team. And so just tons of abuse. So again, observe and see what they're doing, how they're modifying their gear. And so we said, well, hey, let's integrate it. So that's why we've had a gel pad for almost 15 years now. But that hammocking is really important, again, so that you're not putting your body weight up against the shell. We also do that throughout the leg guard, and this is something we've done really for decades too, is really for protection. So, oftentimes you're taking a foul tip off the ground up at your shin. When the ball hits the ground, it kills a lot of the energy. But if you took a direct shot here, the last thing you want is like direct pressure on your shin bone. That'd be really painful. So if you can see here with these different vents, the padding is not right up against the shell. If we took a cross section, you could basically see that right down through the front here, this is a big air gap. And again, that's to isolate the exterior shell from the padding so that you have a bit of a hammock between your body and the exterior below. You can see it a little bit up here too in this junction, and I totally skipped over this, which is, again, there's so much on this leg guard. It's like
keep it rolling.
Yeah. So
I love that because you know what the reality is, like, people need to know what goes into this stuff, right? We take it for granted. We just go down to the sporting goods store and pick it up, and it's no big deal. But this is This is so cool, man.
Well, thanks for appreciating it, Brett. And again, like one of our faults is that we spend years thinking about this, making tons of iterations, lots of prototypes, finding out what works, what doesn't work, and we finish with it, and then we're like off to the next product, like and we don't tell the story of what went into it. So thanks for this opportunity. It's really, really important. So this junction right here between the shin and the knee is also really important. For decades and decades, there's always been this horizontal piece of padding right here. And for us, that was okay, but we wanted to kind of maybe change the aesthetic a little bit, change the silhouette of what a leg guard looks like, kind of break away from tradition a bit. And we're seeing a little bit of wear there, especially with one knee down. You're just spending more time grinding into the dirt. We're starting to see some premature wearing of that junction right there in the old build. And we just thought we could do a better job, both in protection, both in durability, and just the aesthetics. So this is this rubberized piece right here that joins the hard shin and the hard plastic. And the reason we chose this rubberized material is that your legs need to have a bit of torsion. So I don't know if this is showing on the camera here, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it is.
so especially with these deeper athletic poses, these deep crouches we're getting into with one knee down, like it's not just your knee bending, like you're twisting, your foot's planted, your shins going, your knees going this way, your shins kind of going this way, your quads going this way, and so there's a lot going on here. So we want to have a really robust, durable hinge, or not hinge, but like connector here, one that can take a lot of abuse, one that can have that torsional mode like here, but also very stiff in the vertical direction, because that was the other problem we saw over years is if you look at some old picture of Jason Veritek, who's got huge tree trunk quads, every time he stood up with his leg guards without a slide, a shift slider here, it was pushing downward on the shin. And so you start to see on some of his leg guards, this junction would start to compress. And maybe that's okay, but effectively you're making the leg guard shorter over time. So it's not going to fit as well. So we want something that's really stiff in the vertical direction, yet had that nice twisting motion side to side. So this rubberized junction here is doing just that. And it's kind of hard to see with the curve here, but there's also basically nothing behind it. There's a gap of air between this exterior portion and the padding behind, again, to really isolate your patella tendon and the top of your shin from any direct blow. So all in all, like really functional, great fitting.
Is the padding the same thickness, or did you make it a little thicker on this?
It's this. It's this. I gotta think. It's the same.
Okay, because it feels what you're saying right now makes sense, because
Oh,
I feel like there's more cushion, and I feel like maybe I feel a little like I'm sitting a little higher in the one knee stance, and that's just that little gap there, huh?
well, actually, so a couple things. The thickness of this base padding stayed the same. Years ago, when we were revamping our softball line before the Paige Halstead line, so this was probably maybe almost 6 years ago, we tried thinning this out to save some weight, and we realized that it just didn't work out very well. It got too floppy, so we've kept this the same. But the knee pad in here, the removable knee pad, and the removable shin is puffier, and it has more loft, so it is thicker, and it's asymmetric to really fit the unique shape of the shin, how it kind of bows one way or the other. So that's most like what you're feeling, Brett. It is spongier, and the idea is that
It's like I'm on a pillow. I swear, like
perfect.
it feels that comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, we really want this pad to just cradle your shin, and then in particular, the knee pad, we didn't really make it thicker down the middle, but on the wings here, we made it puffier here. And the idea with that is, we want this to cradle your knee. We want this leg guard to really mold around your body. So it is a bit tighter side to side, but with your body weight getting down into it, you kind of smush in, and then it kind of cradles back around. So what you're feeling is exactly what's happening. Sorry, I didn't really describe that very well for the thickness, because I was thinking mostly as the base layer. So yeah, and then probably two last little things here, which there's probably been more that I can tell you about as well, is just from feedback from players on the toe, guys have different length of feet. Some guys have some size 13, some guys got some small size 9s, like, and everywhere in between. So for decades, we've had a secondary toe, and it's always been kind of a kludgy add-on. And typically, guys don't use it until they take a foul tip off their toe, and they're like, "Oh, I need more protection." Then they put it on, and it was just a hard thing to put on because you had these kind of pieces of nylon webbing that had to push through like a metal mushroom cap, button. It just it just didn't work very well. So now they come, with a secondary toe attached. It's just held by Velcro. So if this is too long for you, you can basically remove it and get rid of it and have kind of just your regular primary toe. But you might be in between sizes. Like maybe the secondary toe is too long, maybe the primary toe is too short. Well, that's okay because you can just take the whole toe out and you can extend it. So if I
Mm.
start with the normal length is like this. But if I extend it, I'm going to be kind of excessive here. You can really get to go out, pretty long. So kind of one of the themes of this leg guard is customization. Like starting with the shin length, that's the first thing. Dial in the shin length so that you get the proper articulation of the knee, so that this thigh pad is sitting really, really flush on your quad every time you get down to crouch. And then you can start dialing in the straps a bit more. You can dial in your preference on the toe as well. So and then same thing. Like you can start playing around with maybe the knee pad. Maybe up or down a little bit, side to side, depending on the contours of your leg. So again, it's comfort is paramount. Like safety is paramount, and then comfort comes next. But overall, like we're really happy with the product and really pumped with all the positive feedback we're getting from the players using it this past season.
Well, I mean, I'm getting a ton of good feedback. I had, that set you sent me, and I've had all the guys, running through it. I'm telling them all try it on, and there's there's such a different feel. It's new, it's different. I mean, it really is, and it's one of those things that I think you guys are pushing the envelope to really make the changes that are necessary. Baseball, as we know, especially catchers, because we got to hear about how lazy we are being in a one knee stance all the time. But it's a very traditional
Right.
game, right? It's a little hard
It
to get
is. It is.
outside the box.
Yeah, but I mean, just think about like where the position has evolved in just the last 5 years. Like I remember it was the COVID year, 2020. Like, well, you go back to 2019, everyone was in a traditional 2 point stance. Again, Jose Molina was getting down on a knee every once in a while. Um, and heck, if you go way back to like Tony Pena in the 80s, like Tony Pena was like way ahead of the curve,
Yeah, yeah, for
you
sure.
know, and he was working the lower part of the zone. And actually, I have to give Jonathan Lucroy some credit too, because back when he was on the Brewers, he was the first guy who started telling my brother and me that he starts low because he's more effective in converting balls into strikes. Like, so he was way like, this is probably at least 5 years ahead of anyone else.
Hmm.
And so, but then 2019, everyone's pretty much in a traditional 2 point. 2020 comes around, and I'm going around to like spring training, and like everybody's on a knee, like everybody. It was like overnight. It's like whoa, like where did this come from? And it's been worked on more and more ever since, and getting more refined, more smooth. Um, and again, like I was saying, it's here to stay. When we started designing it, we weren't so sure. We're kind of taking a bit of a gamble with that, and I'm glad we did because it's really worked out. But yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, we've actually had a lot of guys on the show that played through COVID, and they all say that it was like guys started dabbling before COVID. Then when COVID hit and they got a chance to not play for whatever, they were like, "All right, well, if I'm ever going to try it now." And they all went into it. They all saw success with it, and it's obviously, like you said, it's here to stay for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's funny. Like, I was still kind of curious, like where the umpires are going to go with, especially like the Mitt starting low and coming up. And a good friend of mine is Chris Briones, who was a longtime coach with the Rangers and has been at the Marlins for a long time. And he was telling me that he was working in those early years, like on one knee down. I think it might have been like Will Banfield, and they worked on it all through spring training for the first time, getting it down. They go start the minor league season, and the young umpire behind them, as soon as they dropped a knee and started coming up with the ball, it was just ball, ball, ball. Even when it was a strike, it was almost like this overcorrection because the umpire was kind of like, "I know what you're doing," and so they had to kind of readjust. But since then, I think it's kind of leveled out a bit more. But it's definitely really interesting. I'm still curious where automated strike zone is going. I mean, it seems like it's definitely going the way of the challenge system, which definitely brings a different dynamic to the game. But there's still guys out there who said that they can fool the machines too, and fool the robots.
It's interesting because the challenge system, obviously, if you can limit it, that's good. But um, there's just there's such a beautiful aesthetic to the game of baseball because we get to watch the catcher the whole time, and just seeing how they move and how they receive, and to think about a guy just not having to care and just catch it and throw it back, and just there's a light that goes on is just God. It just hurts a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if anyone knows what Manfred's thinking for the automated strike zone. I mean, I have a feeling it's an idea to try to make the game more precise and less questionable calls. And I think that's fine. But one thing I think about is the law of unintended consequences, because we come in the next day after someone blows a call, like, oh, did you see that last night? Yeah, like, oh, yeah, like, but we're talking about the game,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
one thing I worry about is if you clean the game up too much, we're not going to talk about it as much,
for
like,
sure.
and is that good or bad? Who knows? Um, but if we got a little bit of time, do you want to talk about mitts and specifically moving up with the ball?
I do.
Because we've just started. Well, for a little more than a year, we've been playing around with a Japanese pattern, and by that, I should kind of maybe frame the conversation a little bit. Is that we have a group in Japan who sells our product, so All Star Japan, and with our working with them, we have a full appreciation that baseball in Japan is different. Like it's just there's subtle differences that maybe we don't observe as spectators, but product needs to be a little bit different. There's different rules. Um, so, basically, we gave them the permission to explore things, explore product that we don't make. And we just want to have like kind of like a final stamp of approval, like to make sure if it has our branding on it, that it's, really our thing, or really something we're proud of. And so with that, they started making some mitts for Japanese players. And so these are just hitting our website this week for the first time, and but it's been about a year in the making, and it's at first I'll be honest, I didn't appreciate them when I first looked at these mitts. I was like, gosh, these are so different from anything that we offer from any other major brand that we compete against. They're just very different. Like they're super stiff, out of the box, just really really rock solid, and the pocket just seemed almost too big. Like the ball would rattle around. The thumb and the pinky are very, very thin, and they're pretty shallow as well. And so at first I was just like, gosh, like I don't think I
Kind of
could
got a
use
first
this.
baseman, like a first baseman glove, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, similar but different. And
Yeah,
and partly because I think really what I was hung up on was just like how thin, the pinky and the thumb were, with this feeling like I was going to lose the ball. But as we started getting out there and doing some wear testing, and again, wear testing is critical, whether it's leg guards, chest protectors, anything we make. A mid is no different. Like we need to get the feedback from the player. What we started, realizing is, well, one, even though they're really stiff, they do break in relatively fast. I mean, definitely longer than a Pro Elite CM 3000, but it's not going to take a year. We have had a couple guys who got these at spring training, and through spring training, they're playing games with them in spring training, and they use them as their gamers all season, the minors.
is that just the type of leather that's stiffer?
Well, it's the leather is a big part of it. Also, the felt and the padding in here as well. It's a whole system. If
Mm-hmm.
the felt too soft, eventually the leather is going to break down and get weak. You can sometimes use a softer leather as long as you have stiff enough felt, but over time, again, things might soften a little bit too much. So there's a balance. Um, but one of the more unique things, and this is really hard to explain kind of in pictures, but the way you dress your hand into a mitt is different on these. The finger pattern is slightly rotated counterclockwise relative to the pocket, and that's really important because if you think we're all trying to get in this position, so we present the pocket to the ball appropriately, but that's a lot of strain on our forearm kind of coming down in this area. So what's happening is with the fingers being rotated a little bit more this way, it's just a little bit more comfortable to get into that low position to work up the zone. So it's a real subtle difference, but guys feel it. And again, we go to the pro players. Like we're not professionals. We just listen to them, and it's amazing, what insight they have. Like, case in point, when Martin Maldonado and a couple other guys wanted to have a 34-inch mitt, I was like, guys, we have a 33 and a half. Like a 34 really isn't that much of a difference. And truth be told, to this day, if I have a 34 and a 33 and a half side by side, if I look at them, I can't tell you the difference. Like if you blocked out the model number, I couldn't tell you which is 34, which is 33 and a half. But when a guy puts a 34 in his hand, he's like, oh yeah, that's bigger. So again, we just listen to these guys. And so little details like that with like the fingers slightly shifted, is a huge improvement for them. I don't know if you know Chris Snooze by any chance, under two catching.
Yeah.
And we go back a long time with Chris because our first training mitt, the Pocket, was basically Chris Snooze, his design. He and our dad worked together. So I sent Chris an All-Star Japan mitt earlier this spring, and he just said it just feels natural. It just feels like a part of our hand. Same thing, Will Banfield. He's using this model, the R21. And he switched to it, and he just says it feels like it's an extension of his hand. So, and kind of circling back to the size of the pinky and the thumb, initially I was like, man, this is just a lot of space, and maybe it's going to shape very, very deep. But even so, it just seems like the ball's going to rattle around like crazy. But what I've come to appreciate now is that even though this measures similar to like a 34-inch pattern, the effective surface area is bigger than our 35-inch. And we have another competitor who's got a 36-inch model. And when we measure the pocket size, it's like simply tracing it out, this is actually bigger than the 36-inch pattern. So what you're getting is a very lightweight, nimble mitt.
And that's a
not
34,
super huge.
You said?
Yeah, so this basically measures a 34 in terms of the overall circumference, because that's how we measure mitts. A 35 is like the outside circumference of 34. So this is closer to, basically right around our 34-inch. But the actual surface area where you receive the ball is much larger than our 35 and even bigger than the 36-inch from a competitor. And so you're just getting much more playable surface area. And, another trend for the last couple of years for us is guys are going up a mitt size. So if you go back maybe 5 years ago, our most popular mitt size with our pro players was 33 and a half. You had Jason Varitek, in his day, he was an outlier using a 35. This past year, going into spring training, I had all of our mitts lined up by size. So all the guys, get their names on them. And it's sort of like a little bar chart. I've got like a stack of mitts that are 35 and 34s and 33 and a half. And it's crazy. Like there's barely any 33 and a halves. There's a ton of 34s and even more 35s. Because year over year, guys just keep going up in mitt size. It's all because pitchers putting on more spin, there's more movement on the ball. They just want a little bit more room for error for receiving. So back to this, that's what the guys are telling me is they really appreciate these Japanese style mitts because it's not a super heavy mitt. Like it's not making just a bigger mitt. Because when you make a bigger mitt, it just gets bigger and heavier. They're basically keeping the same profile, but that effective working surface area is larger, so they can manipulate the ball a bit better and have just more confidence that they're gonna receive every pitch thrown. So really wild because it's a complete 180 from when I first saw these. And now, like I put my hand in these so much, like I start putting my hand into other mitts. I'm like, ooh, like our regular mitts don't feel right any longer, because these just are just so unique. So, but yeah, so anyways, it's
another positive that I'll say. And so growing up, I was like always a Rawlings guy. Mm-hmm. Only reason being my first glove was a Rawlings, and I literally never changed because I didn't even think to change.
Yeah.
And I always loved the depth of the pocket in the Rawlings glove. But as I've evolved with catching, back in the day, it was more catch it, stick it. If you moved it, it was just turn it. And so your hand was a little bit more involved in the actual catch. So now when we think about the idea of like moving through the glove, through the pocket, through the ball, we can't be real catchy anymore. We have to really allow that movement to work. And so this is that, and I have the Pro Elite 35. This is by far my favorite glove I've ever used. And the biggest reason being there's like, if I show you, there's like an actual distinction, right, between the pocket and
Yep.
my hand. And so we always talk to the kids about the idea of like the glove is like a bat, like your hand is the handle and the pocket's a barrel. And we want to, get the hand on a path that guides the pocket to the ball, just like our hands get on a path to guide the barrel to the ball. And so this
Totally.
glove to me has been a real game changer, especially too, because now when we're trying to move it quicker, it's light. This thing,
Yeah.
when you think
Yeah.
a 35-inch glove, you would think, oh, it's a lot of leather, it'd get heavier. But to your point on the new glove that you have there, when you also, like you're talking about, shift the hand basically away from the pocket,
Yeah.
we again get away from the catchy feel, right? Like the ball is literally starting the process of closing the glove by hitting the pocket instead
Yes.
of
Yeah.
us catching the ball.
Yeah. 100%. And that's one of those finer elements that you try to teach kids. And let the ball close the mitt.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't trying to stick it any longer. And so back to Chris Snooze, like it was, again, this is probably another rabbit hole, but he and Eddie Rodriguez were talking to us about the similar time about a keyhole. Like Ed, I already had a prototype from Eddie on the keyhole, and maybe about like 6 months after we're working with Eddie on the keyhole concept, Chris News is talking about us building a mitt specifically, somewhat floppy, maybe with like a net in it, just to let the ball really close the mitt. And again, he was talking about like a really L shape with your hands. Like he really thought like we need to make the mitts more like this. So a lot of this is really kind of converging into where we are now with All Star Japan. Is that it is kind of again kind of moving your hand more out here. Um, for all the reasons we just talked about. So it's really, really fascinating how this is all evolving. And I don't know, I'm personally really excited about these mitts, but they're not for everyone. Like, and I'll be clear too, because like, there are guys who love our Pro Elite. They've tried these. Either they just put their hand in it and they're like, no, it's not for me, or they've taken it and they've tried, breaking it in, but they just couldn't take it into a game. And part of that is like the familiarity. Like they've used our Pro Elite for such a long period of time, they're just very, very comfortable with it. Um, and what's exciting to me, and this is maybe more on the sales side of things, is that I feel like we're winning over guys who are using other brands, who are gravitating towards this, which that's great. If we can kind of capture more guys, because we're very open, like, and maybe it's like a little bit of a look into how we work with our pro players, is that we're not a mega corporation. We don't have a big war chest of money to throw at guys to have our branding on TV like our competitors. So really our niche is like, how do we make the best product, the best service, to really capture these players to work with us? And that's why we call them our focus team, is they really help us focus on the product. Like I've told you all these different stories about how the players help us, evolve the product. So they really are our eyes and ears on how to make this stuff better. But they don't pay a lot of money. We just, as a family business, we just don't have that. So our philosophy is very different compared to some other brands. Like other brands are like, you have to head to toe our brand. Whether it's your head, your chest, legs, your mitt. We have a completely opposite philosophy. We're just like, use what you like of ours. If you've been using a different model mitt from a different brand, and I want you to try our mitt. We've got the Pro Elite, we've got the S7 Axis, S7X CM5000 now with a little bit deeper pocket, and now we have these All-Star Japan mitts that we're starting to work on. Like, try them. But if functionally they don't work for you, keep using brand X. I can't tell you to. I mean, this is how you make your career. I can't force you to use it. And honestly, like if I could make players wear stuff because of a piece of paper and a contract, or I'm writing a big check to them, is that helping us make better product? It really
Mm-hmm.
isn't, like, because like we've got little skin in the game. We have to keep working really hard to earn the respect and the trust of these players by delivering better product. And so we'd be very complacent if we could kind of sit behind a contract and say, hey, you have to use all this stuff because we said you have to, and your signature's on this line. Like we don't play that way. it just keeps us honest, it keeps us working hard. Um, Move forward, rise above, right? I mean, like that's our slogan. And we would be very, very lazy if we weren't challenged with that. So again, a little bit of a peek, behind the curtain, I guess, in terms of how we work with pro players.
Well, and because you are that way, you're making a huge difference in all aspects of baseball. So I hope you know that the detail you put into it, not having maybe the biggest names, but at the youth level, it's a big deal. I mean, I would say, you know, 80% of my guys are using All Star. I mean, it's a big part of the youth landscape, and that's the future big leaguers of tomorrow.
Oh,
And I think
absolutely.
is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's real simple. I mean, we just think if we make a really great product, a parent's going to buy it for their kid's going to enjoy it, and then they tell two other people, three other people, and honestly, we just had very, very stable growth for decades. We don't really do any marketing. We don't do a huge spend on advertisements. We don't buy ads on online or social media. It's really just organic word of mouth. So yeah, so thanks. That means a lot, because I mean, we definitely put a lot of sweat into this, a lot of passion, and it means a lot to hear that. So thanks, Brett.
Well, and thank you. We appreciate you sponsoring the show for us. And again, we put a lot of sweat into the kids, and the kids put a lot of sweat into the game. And to know that what they're wearing, has embodied that same deal is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, catchers are unique. I mean, they grind more than any other player. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully no other position players listen to us right now. But like, I mean, catchers are a different breed, and
Absolutely.
here at All Star we're the same way. Like, we just have that same kind of grind mentality. Like, we keep pushing really hard, trying to push the boundaries. There's a lot of challenging things that we're up against, but we don't let that defeat us. We just just try to push past, or maybe we have to go a different direction, but we just don't give up. So it's a very, very similar kind of culture and feel. So we totally
Love
get
it.
it.
We love it.
Awesome.
We obviously why we connect so well with you guys, just being that small business. So my last question for you: if you've ever listened to the podcast, we have a segment called Baseball Bites. It's presented by Black Bear Diner. We got to have the best place to eat along your baseball journey. You're traveling all over for baseball all the time with your gear. So give me one place that stands out to you.
So I say this, but I don't want to say it because I don't want to give it away either. Because there's a place in Phoenix. So I'm in Arizona at least twice, if not three times a year, between spring training, the fall league, the Major League Baseball umpire retreat. I'm on the board of directors for NOXY, so in January or February, around there's always the one of the meetings for NOXY is out in the Phoenix area. So there's a place I learned about a long time ago called the Hideaway, and there's no sign for it. You just have to know where to go, and there's just kind of like a door. There's some kind of shrubbery on either side of it. It's kind of in like like a strip mall of sorts, but you open the door and immediately just you're hit with just this aroma. Like, it's because there's this like long oak bar that you can sit along. There's some high top tables behind too. It's a very, very small place, dark, but right over the bar they're doing all the cooking. Just open grill, and it's New Mexican cuisine. And what I've heard from the founder, is that it's specific spices to the New Mexico area,
Ooh.
but it's just some of the most delicious food I've ever had. So there have been many times where I fly from Boston and have an early flight. I'll land at like noon in Phoenix, and I basically get the rental car and go right to the Hideaway and have lunch. That's definitely my favorite place out of anywhere I've been in the world is the Hideaway.
Wow, amazing! That was a great story, and I'm excited to get down to Phoenix and try it. Gonna be great. Thank you so much, dude.
Just don't tell too many people though, because it's a small place.
That's right. We got to keep it a little bit tight there.
Right, exactly.
Well, thank you, Stan. Again, thank you for everything you do for us. We truly love our partnership with you, and look forward to continuing to work together. And appreciate you taking the time to break down this MVP Pro gear today.
Thank you so much, Brett. It's been a pleasure. And as you know, if you have any questions, just reach out and we're happy to answer. All right. Catch you later. See ya.
If you enjoyed that, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll have a new episode for you every single Tuesday here on our YouTube channel and wherever you listen to podcasts.